on AM 560, The Answer.
Now, from the Signature Bank Studios. This is Chicago's Morning Answer with Dan Proft on AM 560, The Answer.
Top of the morning, Dan Proft here. The head of the EU Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, has a big idea to jumpstart European productivity. Develop talent partnerships. Where the European Commission ostensibly directs European countries to match EU employers with non-European workers. So the policies of multiculturalism will continue unabated, at least if the EU Commission, those commissars, have their way. It'll just take a different form. They put a new coat of paint on it. Here's her pitch.
And therefore, we must open more safe pathways, legal pathways to Europe. We must create more bridges between our continents. We must make sure that people can find a job where their talent is needed, match the skills, bring skills across our borders. And this is at the heart of our new talent partnership, which offer work routes into Europe. So far, 5 countries have signed up to them, and we hope that more of you will follow. This is such an important model to work on. We have just agreed to create a new talent pool. It will match the European employers and their needs with the non-European job seekers and their skills. And actually, we're launching the pilot of a gateway office in India, so that this will offer opportunities to work in Europe legally. And it could be a blueprint for partnership with other countries if we do it well.
For a reaction to that and other matters, including Obamacare subsidies, pending matter, please be joined again by Casey Mulligan, who serves as the Chief Counsel for Advocacy at the SBA, where he leads the federal government's independent voice for small business within the executive branch. Casey, thanks for joining us. Appreciate it.
Glad to hear from you again, Dan.
Yeah, I should also mention, U of C econ professor, too, back in the day. Should include that credential. What do you think about from each EU employer, from each non-European country according to their means to each EU employer according to their needs?
Yeah, well, a government-run system will likely do the opposite, what's claimed. It's funny they put the word talent in there. It probably will be the opposite of talent. I had experience of that in my professor job and through some of these scholarship systems in Europe. And they would say they were picking the best students. And there was a period of time when they did, but pretty soon became kind of the European version of DEI. And I stopped using those scholarship programs.
Yeah, so, what is it that sort of Europe and maybe some in America fundamentally misunderstand about these, grand visions of how we're going to talent skim from other countries and match employers with their needs? You hear from manufacturers, even just generally speaking, like from the NFIB surveys, small business employers looking for workers. And so this is the predicate to say, again, well, let's go outside of the borders and find the people that our American companies need.
Well, the government says it's going to do things, but it's going to be driven by corruption and political issues. DEI has been one for a long time, and any number of other issues other than what the businesses really need. That's what the market is for, and market signals are the best to determine, who needs to work where and where they should job search. Also, Europe has a lot of workers, a lot of people who aren't working who live right nearby. And I can understand the political reasons why that or European Commission lady is not interested in tapping them, but the market incentives would point in that direction.
Well, and it's also they don't want to tackle, just like we here don't really seem to want to tackle the welfare state too. I mean, you say there's these 6 million job openings and so on and so forth, but then you look at labor participation rate of the able-bodied at in the low 60%, and you say, well, there's a disconnect somewhere where we're incentivizing people out of the workforce, so maybe we should address those perverse incentives first.
Exactly. That's a great example of things that the government made it worse. Those are government policies that you're talking about.
I wanted to get to Obamacare, too. The House Republicans have introduced a plan, just as Senate Republicans did. Neither extend the subsidies to those that are enjoying them per the Biden 2-year temporary subsidy. Families that are making somewhere between $100,000 to up to $500,000 that are enjoying. I don't know if they're enjoying them, but they're getting subsidized Obamacare plans. The House Republican bill does not extend the subsidies, something that President Trump said he'd prefer not to do too, but it would expand so-called association health plans that let small employers unite to sponsor group health plans. And those plans would not have to adhere to many costly Obamacare rules. It almost sounds like a charter school version of a health care plan. But you recently spoke about Obamacare at Hillsdale College. What's your perspective on this discussion?
Yeah, well, the Obamacare, we sensed it when Obamacare was being put together was really going to be hurting the small company plans. And remember, half of America's workforce works for small companies. So this was very pervasive effect. And of course, they made a bunch of promises at the time to say, small businesses be quiet. And one of the promises was going to have a fulsome, well-functioning small business insurance program. It was called SHOP, S-H-O-P. You probably haven't heard of it because it was a flop from day one. So they ended up canceling the type of plans, making illegal the type of plans that small businesses were using. And they've made it worse since then. Particularly Biden gave permission to the states to further regulate the small business plan. So the small business plan expenses have gone up even more than the large business plan expenses during the last several years, because of all these additional regulations, as if there weren't enough in the beginning. And the association health plans would be outside of all that. And that's a great idea. Now we're talking to our friends in Illinois. They might not be allowed it. I think Pritzker's made it illegal to have association health plans, regardless of what the federal government may do. So we'll have another battle there to help our small businesses in Illinois.
Just like they don't allow those short duration plans in Illinois, that could be another useful option for people. In addition to those association plans, the legislation in the House also offers health reimbursement arrangements that would let employers make tax-free payments for employees to buy their own health insurance in lieu of sponsoring a group plan. And then employees would be allowed to buy their own insurance with pre-tax dollars, which would reduce their costs. So, there's more choice here, and more alignment of incentives in terms of reducing price and putting the employee in the position of managing costs than with this sort of, command control Obamacare scheme.
Yeah, I mean, the sad thing about the discussion, and we shut down the government for over a month about these Obamacare plans, is that aside from all these extra people that were added in that you mentioned, the kind of normal utilization of Obamacare was 4% of America. So 90% of America was not on Obamacare plans. But somehow it dominates the political discussion, and Schumer's willing to shut down the government for those 4% of the population. Now, the regulations do extend a lot further, as we just discussed. But the plans and the subsidies that they talk about, it's a lot of money going to a pretty small group of the population. Not that we should ignore any group of the population, but something's backwards when 4% tail is wagging, the 96% dog.
Right. And is your view that the Obamacare subsidies, those temporary ones that were advanced by Biden for 2 years that expire at the end of the year, is it your view that the Trump administration is right? Those should not be, and congressional Republicans, those should not be extended. And this is an opportunity to do something structural with respect to Obamacare, like has been proposed?
Well, I work for the Trump administration now, but, before President Trump was elected, I was saying throughout the Biden administration that these subsidies are hurting economic growth. I come out and said exactly how much they would hurt economic growth. And then after 4 years after I made the prediction at the end of the Biden administration, I said, let's look and see how I did in terms of how Biden's economy moved the purchasing power of workers' salaries. And I was right on. We were almost 5% below where we normally would have been. And that's what you expect. It's what we talked about earlier in this segment, that there is a lot of disincentives to employ people, disincentives to work, and that's what you got. And yeah, I've thought since 2009 that we shouldn't have this sort of thing. And President Trump does not want to have that. He wants to have more choice, less regulation, and some freedom for people and businesses to, they have so many varied situations to allow them to do what's best in their situation without a lot of these costly, and there really are very costly constraints.
Interesting, another sort of angle into this that may explain the motivation by Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries and company. Chris Pope from the Manhattan Institute, writing in the Journal that the Obamacare subsidies could actually kill your plan. He writes that the Obamacare set the subsidies at the highest levels that would avoid creating an incentive for employers to eliminate medical benefits. As you were just mentioning, employers purchase 89% of all privately funded health insurance in the U.S. Obamacare aimed to help low-income working households that lacked an offer of job-based benefits, but the reforms made policies unappealing to customers paying full price. So if all employers currently receiving employer-sponsored benefits switched, the higher subsidies would cost federal taxpayers an additional $250 billion a year, and it may have the perverse effect of killing your plan. So, is your private insurance plan? Is this maybe the real motivation? They're trying to continue to do through the back door what they can't get through the front door, which is piecemeal get to single payer.
Yeah, that was the plan from the beginning. Now, it didn't quite work according to plan, like so many government plans, partly because Obamacare was such a terrible product. And employers knew that those were terrible products, and they knew that their employees knew that they were terrible products. So there was a lot less. Many of us on both sides over-predicted how much people would move off employer plans. Employer plans would drop, and then they'd use Obamacare because people were just didn't want to touch Obamacare with the 10-foot pole. But like anything, if you throw enough money at it, you will get the markets to move. And that's exactly what Mr. Pope is worried about, that we'll be throwing a lot of money at it and just raising the incentive to drop the plans that employers do have.
Yeah, and there's some evidence. He finds over the last 6 years, the share of companies with 50 or more workers offering benefits declined from 94% to 91%, which is, not statistically significant, but it's directionally significant. The proportion of those with 10 to 49 workers fell from 67% to 54%, which is statistically significant. So So the CBO said the employers may hesitate to eliminate health insurance so long as the expansion of subsidies is temporary, but if it's extended further, those subsidies would signal to these same employers that it's likely to become permanent, and so they drop their plans.
Yeah, and the plan decision is somewhat of an annual thing, so they could drop and come back. Although one of the famous episodes of that, remember, was the city of Chicago. I think it was Rahm Emanuel was the mayor at the time, and he dropped some types of coverage for municipal employees and used the Obamacare.
Casey Mulligan, former UFC econ professor, now serves as chief counsel for advocacy at the Small Business Administration, where he leads the federal government's independent voice for small business within the executive branch. Casey, thanks for joining us again. Appreciate it.
My pleasure, Dan.
And Casey joined us on the Turnkey.Pro answer line.
This is Chicago's Morning Answer
Santa's coming to town! Oh my God!
on AM 560.
Santa here? I know him.
The Answer.